Hey guys, and welcome back to the INSITE channel. My name is Freddie or Grimmy Runner, and today we have maNkz in the Crosshair. The IGL of ECSTATIC has led his Danish side through the qualifiers not only to one ESL challenger in Melbourne, but most recently in Katowice. After just breaking into the top 30, ECSTATIC are truly a team to be feared after the player break. And without further ado, maNkz, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on today. How are you doing, my good sir?
Thank you. I'm good. Ready to have a good talk.
Well, I'm happy to have you here. And a fun question before we get into like the actual questions. I always like to ask everyone. It's like, how did you first actually get into CS? And how did you first get into competing? And I want to like touch on as well the fact that you're like obviously Danish. Do you feel like being in Denmark that has like quite a big Counter Strike populace? Did that help you get into Counter Strike?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, I think I always enjoyed video games, but initially it was not Counter-Strike that was like my main priority. I used to play games like World of Warcraft, RuneScape, like MMORPG games, and even when I got into more competitive games, it was actually League of Legends that I like started becoming high in the ranks, and Counter-Strike was kind of like a side thing with my friends,
Hmm.
or like a fun game. I used to play like KC or hide and seek or like
Yeah.
fun modes. Um, but then I started playing like with friends, obviously in Counter Strike, and then I just started like climbing the ranks easy. And then it's like first of global, and then back in like I don't even know, like 2016 or something, when I was not even like close to being pro. I was like top 10 in Denmark on Faceit, and then yeah.
Yeah, because this kind of feeds into my next question. Is it like looking at just like your Wikipedia and your HLTV? It felt like when COVID hit, that kind of like lockdown period seemed to be like a catalyst to commit to full time CS. Like, would that be true?
Not not exactly, because I just played and with friends on my first like good team, but then like I was kind of like waiting for the opportunity to like present itself to like do full time, which was first time on Lyngby Vikings when I got picked up like the full first time, which is a long time ago. I think it was back in 2019 or something.
3 years ago, oh yeah, because you joined them twice, right? So it was like the first time you
Yeah,
joined them. Yeah.
yeah. And then it just took off from there. I got a lot of offers really fast, in my opinion, and then yeah.
Can that be actually quite overwhelming when it's like you're kind of like a new player and like you get loads of offers? Do you like sometimes don't always know like where to go, and can it actually sometimes be like a negative thing if you take a bad option?
Yeah, it was a little bit overwhelming, but the main thing in that period was like the salary, and if the salary increases, because to be honest, it was not full time providing money like I had on all those teams. So the more money, the better. Also, when you start
Hmm.
getting older, if when you're not 18 anymore and you maybe don't want to live at your mom's place your entire life and stuff like that, you need more salary to actually live a life.
Yeah, I think that's like kind of just that's how the world goes round. But during that period, you made some real headlines of like the second time you joined Lyngby Vikings, Lyngby Vikings, and then you turned into like ecstatic. You guys reached like top 15 in the world, but it did feel like you guys could never get past like a certain point of like winning the online tournaments. Like you're winning like the Malta Vibes, you went to the RMRs, but what do you feel like was the issue with this team that you couldn't continue and like push higher almost?
Um, I think we were really good at playing against underdogs, and we were like good at being favorites. And
Hmm.
when we played like the tier two tournaments, also sometimes we were not favorites, but it was like teams like Entropic, who was also like in the tier two realm most of the time. So we could also beat them. But I think it was maybe just a matter of time before we figured out how to approach some of the better teams or more important tournaments, because I don't think that we had the ability to deliver when it mattered the most in the major qualifier tournaments or some of the bigger tournament qualifiers. So and then we got so good to a point where people got offers from big organizations, and Duff got injury, and the team just fell apart basically, and then that's it. Like, we just need more time,
Yeah.
I believe.
Because that song, like that idea of poaching is something I want to come back to later. Because it feels like the team, like your team, a little bit now is now in that cycle of like you got to be scared of someone poaching your players because like you guys are doing so well. And it's like the kind of like tier one partner teams will come like knocking eventually. So that's something I want to talk about later because I think that like that will relay quite nicely to what you were just talking about there. But eventually that team did get picked apart, as you were saying. And then the roster rebuilt like completely around you, but not as a rifler, but as it was an IGL this time.
Yeah.
What was like the idea behind this? Because it would have been your first time IGLing, right?
No, but I will just continue. So I used to be an IGL.
Yeah.
I've been like role swapping, I would say, a lot through my professional career. Before I got like on a salary team, I was the IGL. Then I was a rifle second IGL, I would say,
Hmm.
kind of like contributing that technically. And then I got into being IGL again on Copenhagen Flames, and then after that Existence. And then I was like, okay, now I'm IGL again on like a pro team or whatever. And then I had to go back to being a rifler on Copenhagen Flames when they had a Cillian. And then after that, I got back on Lyngby Vikings / ECSTATIC as a rifler.
Hmm.
So I've kind of been role swapping a lot with like being IGL and not IGL, IGL not IGL. And I've just got to the point now where I do believe that not many Danish in-game leaders in like on our level or my level or where I want to be or where I am right now, like top 30 tier 2 team, tier 3 team, whatever you want to call it. I don't think that any other IGL is necessarily better than me. So I just decided that that's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna be the best in like that realm of competition.
Okay, that makes sense. So, like, do you feel like that whole swapping of roles, playing under a Cillian, playing under Bird from Sky, while like kind of like IGL then not IGL, do you feel like that actually benefited you because you learned so much from others and you like took them in and made it your own?
I would say, of course, I benefited from playing with other IGLs. I do think every player benefits from playing with every player on the team. I don't think it's necessarily the in-game
Mm.
leader, but I did obviously evolve a lot as a player in that time because, yeah, basically all the teams I've been part of have been doing pretty well, pretty good, like instantly as well. But I do believe that the overall experience I've gained from the past 2 years or whatever, I've been farming the or grinding, I would say, the tier 2 scene.
That was a close call. That
Yeah,
was.
that's why I'm grinding the tier 2, 3 scene. I've played so many HTTP matches
Yeah.
and I've gained so much experience that it's just very natural for me at this point. I know what it
Mm.
takes to win tournaments. I know what it takes to be favorite. Like, I know what it takes to be an underdog, and I know like how to prepare as a team and as an individual for tournaments and matches in this realm. I am very comfortable with it now. So it's and probably more comfortable or experienced than most other players, to be honest. Because yeah, most of the
Yeah.
players like either transition into tier 1 pretty early, or they maybe drop out of the tier 2 like top
Mm.
scene, because where I have been almost in top 30 in the tier 2 scene for like 2 years almost, like constantly in top 30 team, like competing for tournaments, like titles in the tier 2, 3 realm. So pretty comfortable with it at this point.
So yeah, it's something you've just said there actually about how players transitioning too early to tier one. Do you actually think this can be a bad thing? Because I always look at some players and I'm like, they will be good, and also like Head Trick. I feel that's a pretty good example. Like I feel like he would be good in tier one, but he got moved up like far too quickly, for instance. Or like I know when Regali was even for that spot, I was like, I'd love to see him there one day. I just don't think right now. Do you feel like it can be like really negative if a player gets moved up too early?
I do think there's different opinions on like experience and what it like the experience means in Counter Strike, but I think it's very individual and also like the surroundings because let's say like you have the OG lineup now.
Mm.
Like the rumors say that it's going to be Regali, Fico, and Neofrag they build around, and I just don't believe they have enough experience to be, let's say, a consistent top 10 team because I do believe that they need more. Like maybe they get players with experience, of course. I cannot say that,
I think
but
Nexa was
yeah,
thrown in there at one stage.
yeah,
Coming back in,
and
yeah.
yeah, and I do think that you just need these people, and yeah, I think it's very like individual. But I would say one thing is that if you have a lot of tier 2 experience, it's probably easier to transition into tier 1.
Mm.
But it it you don't have to have a lot of tier 2 experience, I would say like that. Maybe a guy like Bit, he just instantly destroyed the tier 1 scene, but he also had really good surroundings. Like Blade is, I think, is a
Yeah.
really good coach. They had a really solid system. He was just plugged in as a piece where he didn't have to do a lot, and he just destroyed.
But you'd
So yeah,
say that's more like that's not a common thing though. Like you're saying
no,
that's yeah, like he's a good player plus surroundings. Like you'd agree that's like
yeah,
a pretty rare thing to happen, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so something you also did say is that you'd always like risen to the top 30 pretty quickly, which is true. However, at the end of last year, you as a team definitely struggled quite a bit. Like I remember I actually messaged you when you won your first game. Because I was casting. I was like, finally,
Yeah.
like you guys won. But it's like how did that feel actually to always be winning and then out of nowhere be like, oh, we've just dropped to like 80th in the world? Like, how were you able to rebuild from kind of like that point to then 3 months later you were in Melbourne?
Yeah. That's a good question because I did not expect it to be such a rough, like, route or whatever to becoming like.
Hmm.
I didn't expect us to rush into top 30, but I expected us to reach playoffs in tournaments like the CCT tournaments or
Hmm.
um like faster get a like good fundamental level, and we would beat like teams that I've been used to shit on. Like we could beat top 50 teams with our eyes closed, basically. Like we rarely lost. Like
Yeah.
uh, and it was a hard like reality check, I would say, for me personally, because in like you know that you are capable of being part of some like a team that can just sit on these teams, but uh, I just had to realize at like pretty early, like a couple of months in, that we needed more time. We needed to work hard. I needed to take a lot of responsibility of like developing the team and the players and creating a system that actually allows us to like beat some of these teams and also like even better teams. So yeah, it's been a really rough time in the beginning of the team, but of course I always believed, and we also made a few roster changes that made it easier, I would say. But yeah, I'm just happy that we have created a good foundation for us as a team, and also uh, like kind of proud that it happened because it's like something thought I was capable of, and I had a little bit of doubt at like certain moments of this team, but I'm just happy that we like. I do believe that we have a such like much stronger foundation now, and we have a lot more understanding with each other on the team, and yeah, that's just good.
Do you feel like yeah, because like sorry. So when you said that like it was almost like a back to reality thing, a lot of players and this was a theme I kind of saw at the major was when like I'll use Liquid's example, like when they went 0-2, they used it as like a shit, like we gotta get our stuff back to like we gotta like actually start playing now. Did you like actually find that it benefited you guys maybe a little bit that like you went through that hardship and then now you're here and like it all like it's actually like you've earned it a little bit more maybe?
Yeah, kind of, because I do believe that if you have like certain players, you can reach a like very good from the like foundation, have it like early on your
Hmm.
team. But I do think that, of course, you feel like you've earned it a bit more because you go from nothing. But I do think that also like it would be nicer to instantly like
Yeah.
be better because it's really not easy to have like 20% win rate on HLTV, and you're
Yeah.
kind of like if is this ever gonna work?
Mm.
Like how do you come back from 20% win rate on HLTV? You could not win a match. Like it was so dark, and you just put in so many hours, and it just doesn't get you anywhere. But yeah, we made it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of orgs can be very like they see these mistakes and they're instantly like, well, roster change. Were ecstatic present as an org during this period? Like, would they have been helpful maybe in like the okay, like I don't care, we're gonna find success and like I'm gonna stick with this type thing?
I think I had some responsibility on that part, but also they had like certain expectations, and I do think that no organization or team is like happy with like the results we had, and
Yeah,
I do think that at a point, um, me and also the management, we discussed and we had to set like certain goals because initially we kind of made it more like it had it more like loose, like it's gonna come, we need time,
yeah,
etc. But 6 months into like the project, it only got like went downhill, and then we had to like make certain goals for us to reach as a team, and I can say that we exceeded our expectations as an organization and a team coming into the player break. But yeah, that's basically what we had to do. But I
yeah,
do think that like me personally, and also I don't think that like they didn't put like unnecessary pressure on us. But I do think like no matter what, no matter who you are, what team you are, you cannot have 20% win rate. You cannot
yeah.
do like have such bad results without like having some kind of like pressure on you. But it's only like
Mm.
it's like it's what would you do with it kind of, because you know that it's not good enough and you know you need to change something. So
Yeah. Well, as you said, expectation exceeded. But so throughout the whole of Ecstatic, and this was something I was interested to talk about, and I feel like it's been resolved now, was that one of the struggles you had was filling the AWP slots. Like you had Wolfie and then Exello, and then I know I can't pronounce his name, but Brazer?
Releaser.
Breezer? Okay, Breezer. And then now Salazar. Like, why was it kind of just so hard to fill that AWP role? And like, because with Breezer, like, he was in the roster for like 3 months, maybe.
Yeah. So I I think that it's like two different rosters, and I think people like compare my time in Ecstatic is kind of as like the same, but it's really
Yeah,
not, because I have like the international experience with like being consistent top 30, like international players, more experienced players. I was not even IGL at that point.
yeah,
And then I transitioned into IGL and like national team with less experienced players, I would say. But in the original rosters, like the international rosters, I would say that we were like, of course, I was not the in-game lead at that point, so my opinion on our AWPer was like less important.
mm,
But I do believe that both Cello and Wolfie were like a good like addition to the team, and I think we had like good times both of them. Um, so on the new like the national roster, um, it was just that we needed a change, I would say, and but it's always like the Danish in-game leaders, no, not in-game leaders, AWPers has been like not very strong, I would say, in the past years. Of course, you have like some players who are on better teams like Farley and Aco and Device, but other than that, I think the talents have been really weak. Like I don't think like this is not to be like rude or anything, but I just don't believe like players like Lucky, Wixo, Gen Z from Masonic, I don't believe they are ready to take the step into like a dominant tier 2 team or even a tier 1 team yet. And so yeah, so we kind of decided to go with more like unproven players, kind of also Breezer, but also like with Salazar. And I do think that Salazar is like really, really good, and I'm just so happy to be his teammate now, and I just love working with him. And I do think he has a really, really bright future in the Danish Counter-Strike scene if he just continues and he gets like good environment, which I do believe he's in now.
Yeah, because I remember when I cast that first match of Salazar, and like I was with my duo, and we looked at him, we went, "Who is this guy?" Like we were like, "Where have you found him from?" And like it literally felt like you just plucked him out of thin air. Like if I'm not mistaken, he had signed like 4 HLTV games or something like that, like before, and like neither of them were like in a tournament. It was like an open qualifier mix. Like firstly, like how did you find him? And secondly, like that must have been a big risk to just go like, yes, I'm like this team, like we need this unproven, like why, what qualities was he showing that you were like, he may not be refined yet, but I can take that and I can make it into what we need.
Yeah. So the first, like how we found him was kind of like we looked at the lower Danish rank like leagues, and we saw like who is just popping, because I do believe that you need an AWPer who shoots people nowadays.
Yeah.
And he was not like truly outstanding in the like stats, but he was also playing like a bigger league than the other guy we were looking at, who is was Jay Bone from Atlantic. He is on now. He was like really unproven at that point too. I don't
He
even know
just
if
played the
you.
finals, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And so both of those guys we trialed, and I do believe that they both have a lot of talent. But like in terms of like deciding who to go with, it was kind of like the potential, I would say, and also like the play style. Because Jay Boone is very like ferocious in his play style. He just goes for like very aggro peaks and stuff like that, whereas Salazar, I do believe, is a little bit more of a mix. And I just think that in the server he fitted a lot, but the main thing was actually outside of the server, which the management handled a lot. They wanted like a guy who was gonna be a good part of the team, but not only on the server. And that's what I think is very nice about Salazar. He's like such a good teammate out of the server, and such a nice guy out of the server, and that is the most important thing.
Yeah, so could you expand on that part? Because like he's also very young, if I'm not, like he's 18. Like so like what? So when you mean out of the server, do you mean as just like an individual, or from the management side, is that like a like media personality type person?
I don't think the media is that important,
Okay, so
but
not the media part. Okay, yeah.
no, but it's just like how is he acting in like the initial like conversation,
Hmm.
and what are his values in life outside of Counter-Strike? Like, does he go outside? Does he eat well? Does he sleep well?
Oh.
What is his past experiences in life? Like, did he attend sport? Stuff like that. And
Ah. Okay. Yeah.
that's what is important, because then you have the right mentality, and that will get you far in the long term.
Yeah, because it could like as a young player, it can sometimes be hard to like that be one of your traits. Like he's 18 and he already has those traits. It's actually quite impressive. But something I want to touch upon, you were saying, and you were talking about how you don't feel like there's a lot of upcoming AWPers in the Danish scene. Why is that? Do you feel like there is no one teaching them, or is like a lot of these bigger AWPers not helping? Like, is there a reason you could see, or do you think it's literally just like, I don't know, there just isn't?
Oh, that's a rough question, because so the first thing is, I mean, there should be an AWPer on every team, I guess, but I think the main thing is that I don't think Danish AWPers are like does not have a big enough ego, so they maybe don't fit the role,
Hmm.
which like I do believe that you need an ego to be a good AWPer,
Yeah.
and you need to be selfish and stuff like that. And I do believe that maybe even the people that are teaching the AWPers don't understand that. They are like too focused on like Danish Counter-Strike and also on like teaching them the wrong things maybe. Like they are not very role specific, they are very overall. And I do think that is harming maybe a lot of the upcoming Danish AWPers. It's just a guess because Danish CS is very like you need to go together, you need to trade. If you need a peek, you always need a flash, or you always need a backup plan. Whereas, like in my opinion, as an AWPer, you need to just play on feeling. You need to like take control of the map alone if you want to some extent. You also need to be able to like teamwork, but I do think that's like what is missing on most Danish AWPers, and which is why they are not providing the same numbers as maybe Russian AWPers or maybe some Romanian, Bulgarian, like those kind of players, because I do believe they have more ego and they have more like individual power.
Yeah, because I think especially like Excello, just take his example, and I know it's kind of what I was talking to. I spoke to Regali a little bit about. Is that like he was just the best player in his region, so it's kind of like not hard to have that ego sometimes. Because like when he came out of Romania and he was like, yeah, like I'm the like I shit on everyone pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. So in your team, would you then be the player? Obviously, like you're the IGL, but like, would you be taking the most time with Salazar to like put him and make him into what you want? Are you the person doing that?
Yeah, because we've never really had like a full-time coach,
Hmm.
and also I do believe that I know the most what I want from him,
Yeah.
but on certain maps or positions, there is like a freeway going. Let's say on overpass, he also needs to talk with his A guy, right? About like how they want to approach rounds and what setups they want to run and who has the most priority in terms of like start round calling. Like, do we need to set up the rifler the most or the AWPer the most or stuff like that?
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I want to go back to this like whole role thing we're talking about because this is actually something I've messaged you about before because it really confused me when I saw it.
Oh,
Was that so? And correct me if I'm wrong on any of these things, but Queenix, from my perspective, used to be the entry of your team when it was, I guess, maybe like a little bit earlier with Breza. These Danish names, man. And now like you're the entry, and I fact checked a few things, and like at the Katowice that you were playing a lot of very hard entry roles, and Queenix is now like more of a lurker, and then on City's side he's like a hard anchor, and obviously as an IGL you play like very positions that have a lot of movement.
mm.
What was the decisions behind these changes, and do you feel like because you said to me you've changed roles so much, you were able to fit what the team needed?
Yeah. I think that I made a mistake of building the team initially with like not only the players that we picked, but also like the roles they had, and also on like different maps. Um, and I tried to like make them players they are not like make them players they are not currently, and they don't maybe want to be.
Yeah.
So like basically, what happened was that we did a lot of role changes at a certain point, and then I do think that everyone got more comfortable, and that's basically what happened. Like
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Me and Kraken are the aggro players, and Queenix and Nodius are the defensive players, and Salazar is kind of a mix.
Got it. Okay, so was the changing of Cabia Nodios part of this like role change system then?
Uh, Kind of, because initially I wanted Nodius on the team as kind of a space creator, space taker, aggro player, map control player. But then it just really didn't fit our game at all. And then I just decided that we needed a role change. And then Kraken got a lot more responsibility, if you can say it like that. And more space, and then it was kind of like Nodius and Queenix just relaxing, kind of like being more defensive, and me and Kraken were like super aggro. And
Ah,
also on CT side, we changed a lot because I was anchoring and expecting certain things from my teammates on positions, but I've just realized that it was probably better that I just took the responsibility and
yeah.
made the decisions, and then the others could like just play more defensive. They didn't have to play aggro. They didn't have to take chances that
Mm.
much and have that much responsibility, and that's kind of like what happened.
Damn, so you guys changed everything pretty much. Like, what? Like, so would this be around the period where like you were coming out of the dry spell? Did you just go, fuck it, we're changing everything?
Kind of like so we got Nodius on the team and things were going build up, but they were not good enough in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then I just told the guys like I do think that we need to like I thought about every map, every position, and I think we need like a big role change. And yeah, that's basically just what we did. Like we
Yeah.
swapped a lot of position, and the main things was that Queenix and Nodius were gonna be super defensive, and me and Kraken were gonna be super offensive.
Okay.
And
That
then
yeah.
yeah,
And like it just worked really. Um,
yeah,
and then I feel like segueing from that conversation of success, we cannot have an interview and not talk about like the fact that you made both Melbourne and Katowice through the open qualifiers both times. Like obviously we had the conversation start like at Katowice
uh,
technically through the open qualifiers, like you did
uh,
make it through the open qualifiers, but for context, teams dropped out and you were just the next team up from, but still point improvement, like you still made it from the open qualifiers. And like from my perspective, it's actually harder getting to the event from that position than the event itself.
yeah,
Like, and I think a lot of people don't quite realize how difficult open qualifiers can be, and like
yeah. Even
how
close qualifiers,
yeah,
honestly.
and like you're online, you're playing so many games a day. Can you just give us like a rundown of how intense these days are and like how actually difficult it is? Because I feel like people just don't realize.
Yeah. So I don't know how or exactly why. I have an idea, obviously, but I just think that our style and the way we approach these tournaments and is just very strong. I think we play without pressure, and the way I call is just very strong, and the way we prepare for these tournaments is just very strong compared to most other teams. We made it through like so many qualifiers already to like we made it to the RMR when we had pracked for like 1 week or something at the like Malta RMR,
Yeah,
and we made the next close qualifier for the Copenhagen Major, and I don't know if we made it to the Rio. We didn't make it, but we also like went through like a lot of qualifiers
yeah,
basically, and I just think that it's just because we are so good at playing without pressure, and it's just very easy if you play without pressure, in my opinion. Because I mean, obviously we had so many close matches, and but it's just like we just played basically. We had a plan, and we just went with it, and yeah, that's it. But the days, of course, are very long, and the preparation is very intense, and we also have some pressure, but we are very good at building it up until it doesn't matter anymore. Like when we
mm,
win the important matches, it's like then it explodes. But until then, it's kind of like we just believe we just it's like whatever happens happens. And I'm like, we are doing the sickest comeback. It's like we won like 12 T rounds in a row, and I'm just like, guys, let's rush B again. Like just smiling a bit, like guys, let's just rush B. It's so easy. And then everyone's like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's just rush B. And then we make it into overtime, and then it's like, okay, let's go, and then we just win the match. It's like,
Oh, that's pretty that's very good to hear. And like fuck, 1 second, it's gonna get cut out. I had a question, I've completely forgotten it. Shit. Okay.
Oh, maybe it's
Oh.
about the tournament itself or something.
Oh yes. What I was gonna say. So Jordan will cut this out. Oh, our amazing editor. Okay. So like you were talking about the pressure and like you guys don't have it. However, do you feel like you might have a little bit more expectation because you have done it now? Do you feel like you might say like, oh, we've done it twice, like why can't we just do it again type thing?
Mm. I think that, of course, I know we are capable of doing it, but I have known that since the beginning of the team because we beat like top 30 teams when we were barely a team. So the expectations were kind of there from the beginning, but the hard part, in my opinion, was how to enable it. Because as soon as I apply pressure to the team, as soon as players feel the pressure, then that's when it starts like going bad. And I think that like of course like it's like this for every team, but let's say we play open qualify against teams like Big, Movistar, Force. We know that these are teams that we are not supposed to beat, so we play without pressure. And it's like that for every team. But then I think that some teams they start gaining pressure when they win matches against them. Whereas I think we are very good at like staying calm, like okay, there's still no pressure, even though we are up on the third map, or even though we are one map away from qualifying, stuff like that. But yeah, it's kind of like being where there is no pressure is the hard part because then we go and play a top 80 team in the world, which is like so much worse team in my opinion, and then we just crumble individually, and then the pressure starts mounting on every one of us, and then it just goes wrong. And it's kind of like the same when we are at the when we are at the actual tournaments, like there's just a different environment um, on the server and as individuals. So that's the hard part, in my opinion.
Okay, do you feel because like as we said before, like I think it's fair to say you've got a pretty young team. Like obviously, like there are like you guys do have experience, but then like I think Kragan, I'd still put him as a fairly inexperienced player. I feel like he's had a very like his career is literally just been like from open to where we are. Like I remember watching him in Masonic and Inter. I played against him in Inters and
Yeah.
like do you find this is just a matter of time and like there's nothing you can really do about it right now apart from just like continue what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. Because I do think that every team, like every player, needs like a good environment to develop, and that's what I'm trying to provide to my teammates, and especially when I play with such experienced players. I also learned a lot during this time because it's very different from being on a team where you are kind of like on the same page and then like having more less experienced players and kind of like trying to not teach them but like yeah it's just hard. But yeah, I do think like we have such some of the most talented players in Denmark, and they just need time to flourish and just develop. And it's not gonna happen. Like I don't know when it's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen at some point. I think it's something I call it such just this click. If you have the right environment, if you have like you have the potential.
Hmm.
Like guys like Salazar, he's bombing every practice, but it's just a matter of time before he does it in every official. And then he's gonna be considered one of the best players in tier 2 probably. But it just needs to be say like click for him.
Yeah,
And I think it's
oh sorry,
yeah,
continue.
it's the same for every one of us. Like the more like when you get consistent in what you're good at, then it's very easy for everyone like to play.
Yeah, and when he clicks, you can sit back and be like, "Yep, I found him. That was all me.
Yeah.
That was all me." Um,
um,
but and like kind of talking about how I feel like it'd be fair to say you guys as a team, from a lot of people's perspective, like fly under the radar, but then do really well. But then like you're not like I feel like yeah, you're not like massively explosive where like everyone's talking about you, but then you're still like doing all these results, like you're still winning in your own way. Do you feel like you are getting like a little bit more respect on like your team's name and like these younger players, like other teams are starting to kind of like understand who you are now?
Yeah. Of course, if you have the players we have, you should not be on paper afraid of us. And
Yeah.
also, like the results we have been like providing majority of the time on the team, you should not be afraid of us. But I do believe that it's nice to prove to people that we have stick together through hard times. I have developed as an IGL, and our system have developed overall, and we can just like prove to people and teams that we are actually a team to be like afraid of. And also some of the analysts or casters or whatever, I don't know what you call them, like talent teams or whatever,
Talent team, yeah.
they start to recognize that we actually like most people still like just push us under the rug and say like, oh, they're still the underdogs. They cannot like be teams like this. But we, like you said, that we actually have been doing it for a long time now. But I still don't think people recognize it that much. Honestly, I do think that people still see us as a bad team and bad players, which kind of makes sense because we don't have that much to back it up, other than like the kind of like you said, like the results in the dark, like the amount of consistent results we have been providing for the past 3 months is undeniable, and people need to start recognizing it now.
So I was thinking about this, and like I, I think I thought about this a lot last night because I was like, yeah, like I genuinely just do not think you guys get like anywhere near the appreciation you do, and I think the reason, and I want to hear your take on this, is that like you look at like these explosive teams like Aurora, Spirit Academy, these guys who have like 1.3 rating on
Mm,
HLTV, and people look at that and they go, oh yeah, they're good because they have like these two players that just dominate everyone. Whereas you
mm,
guys, like, you do have players that do well, but you know, like, no one's like a 1.3, which isn't a bad thing because you're still winning. Do you just
mm.
feel like that maybe is the case? That, like, you guys aren't, like, crushing these, like, massive opponents in your way and people are just, like, looking at others a little bit more?
That might actually be a thing I have never like thought of, because it's very true that we don't have big numbers as individuals at all. Even though we have many matches and we have like good win rate, we barely have people above like 110 rating. I don't even think we
I
have
don't
one
think
right
you
now.
have, like, everyone's very similar. Like, it's literally a point 4 between everyone, a point
Yeah.
0.04 between everyone.
Yeah. And it might be a thing because it's the same we do. We like, fuck man, we're gonna face like Spirit Academy. They have Art Frost and Donk. They're like
Mm.
so good. And oh, we look at like Aurora and we're like, oh, Norway is so good, and they have Kinsey and they have like players like this. It might actually be a thing because I don't look at our team and I say like, oh, this guy's like so good, or this guy's like so good. But from my own perspective, I know that I believe that I'm a good in-game leader, and I know that I believe that Salazar is a good Orba and stuff like that. I do believe that people are good on my team, but I do understand why people from the outside don't see it or realize it, because we are not very like explosive stats wise,
Yeah.
which is a little bit weird. I don't know how you can win so much with such bad stats, but I guess it works.
Yeah, like I was. This is like that really bizarres me. Of like we spoke a little bit about eyeballs at the start. It's like you guys eyeballers. Like the stats don't look great on paper, and then you look at the results, and you're like, how? Like how
Yeah,
does that, like, I don't know how that correlates, but like if it works, it works. So it's like you don't, like, yeah. And kind of like a final point I want to ask about this, like this conversation, is that you spoke about prep and you spoke about how really hard it is, and like you guys don't have a coach. It's literally like you don't have a full-time coach. I don't know if you have like a sub coach. But what would be the type of prep you do for an open qualifier and even for a closed qualifier? Because closed qualifier, like, you don't necessarily know who you're going to play sometimes till the day, and then open, like, obviously it could be fucking anyone. And then even these events who have like these massive organizations that have like 4 analysts, like, how
mm,
would you compete against that? And like, how would the prep go for an open qualifier, for instance?
yeah. That's a good question because, of course, we do all the preparation ourselves. And when we had TML as a coach and he was with us, he just like participated in the preparation. Maybe sometimes he did something for us. But in the open qualifiers, we obviously focused a lot on ourselves until the point where we had the ability to focus on the opponents, because you don't know the first round, the 2 round, the 3 rounds, the 4 rounds. You don't really know who you're facing. So it's a lot about preparing yourself, like what pistol rounds are you gonna play, what 3, 4 maps are you comfortable with, and how do you want to approach those maps against people that you don't have anti-threat on or stuff like that. And I think that's one of our strengths, obviously, which is also why I think that we are good at playing open qualifiers, because I know how I want to approach all maps against no edge threat, and then basically the further we go, the more we prepare for the opponent. Let's say it's like, okay, this team likes to play these and these maps, so we're gonna V2 like this, and then we're gonna anti-strat on those maps, but really only position, because that's what I think is the most important. Because then we have like very solid fundamental agreements of how we want to approach rounds if we get certain kills on the
Yeah.
map. Like, oh, we get the mid player on Ancient, we want to do this mid round call, or we're gonna play the round like this, out like this, and stuff like that. So
Got
that's
it.
basically the most important thing, is just getting positions on the maps we're gonna play, and then we have like pretty solid fundamentals of how we want to approach rounds if we have that information.
Yeah. Just like whacking up an Oasis 5 minutes before, being like, okay, this guy plays this position.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what we do. And sometimes we do like a little bit more preparation. Let's say we play Vertigo. It's pretty important to know what tendencies they have on the A ramp, for example, as terrorists. Like, what smokes do they use? What smokes are they comfortable with? And how are we gonna like counter those smokes? But we already have like a counterplay for it. We just need to
Yeah.
know, like, we are just one step ahead.
Yeah.
Like, basically, we're not 2, 3 steps ahead. We just need to be like one step ahead. Like, it's gonna be enough.
Yeah, because that's all you need. Like, I feel like you could actually, it could be a negative thing if you sit there being like, we need a ABC, like we need these steps. But realistically, in open qualifier, no one's gonna have that, unless like some weird way they might, like if you've played them before and they already have the
Yeah.
stuff. Okay, so that's kind of like the open qualifier stuff, and now for like the actual like events when you're playing against like the tier 1 orgs, is like yeah, you guys don't have a coach. Like that must be a really difficult thing. Are you looking for a coach?
Yeah, I think we're looking for a coach, but with the circumstances, it's kind of hard to like get a coach that fits our team, in my opinion. So we will see what happens with time.
Why do you think it's hard to fit? Like what's the reasoning behind that?
Um, like, I do think that most coaches need a lot of like salary.
Okay, yeah.
In the like especially Danish coaches, and also it's hard to like find someone who would fit the team for not that much salary. That's the main problem, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because like again, like you guys are contesting top 30, so you'd be looking for a coach that would be a top 30 coach, etc.
Exactly.
But something we spoke about earlier about the old Stag team was like the poach or be poached stuff. And I mentioned that like it feels like your team is just destined to be poached. Like you guys are making top 30, and like it's a really difficult thing as an IGL or as a team. It's like, are you worried that like in this player break someone could have been poached, or like if you continue having success, and like if someone does, how would you slot someone into this system? Like how would you like, is there like a backup plan maybe if someone does get poached?
I think I don't really think about it that much,
Yeah,
and
okay.
I just, if it happens, it happens. But the one thing I don't like is like worrying about things that are not a reality yet.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm not gonna go through this player break and be like, oh, we've been doing well. Maybe I should look into like who should be replacements if this guy leaves, this guy leaves, this guy leaves, and or like what player are we gonna need if this guy is getting bored or this player is
Hmm.
getting bored. It's just like, just gonna see what happens if we lose one of our players. We're gonna replace him, and also I'm not too worried about like the results, because I think that I have become a lot better at like utilizing the tools I have, and that's kind of like the approach I'm gonna have, no matter what player we lose. I'm just gonna we are gonna find the puzzle that we feel fits the best, and then we're gonna go around it. Like if we need to change our playstyle, positions, we're gonna do what we need to do to make it work.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And I actually realized something yesterday. I was looking at the Wikipedias. I didn't realize you and Queenix have literally played together since 2017, and
Yeah.
like the majority of your career, apart from like when he went to Masonic, if I'm not mistaken, and like you kind of had that like ecstatic stint. I That's a rare thing to see. Why is it that you guys have actually stayed together so long?
Uh, yeah. It's I'm not exactly sure. Like obviously we just like I don't think that we necessarily don't want to be teammates,
Hmm,
but it's not like we have to be teammates.
got it. Okay.
But initially when we started like reaching a respectable level on the team base, we were like in a French project, I would almost say. Uh, and then we kind of like I think he was the first guy who got like a salaried offer, and then a bit time after I got it, and we kind of like split our ways. And then of course when you need players on your teams and you have to like if you can share opinion, I guess we suggested each other a few times because it's like, oh, we need an IGL. I played with maNkz as IGL, and he's still competing on a decent level. And also, it's like, oh, we need an anchor player. Played with Queenix, stuff like that. And it was very natural most of the time. I would say it was not like, let's say he was on a team that needed a IGL. I would be one of the best options for that team at that time. And also, I was on a team that needed an anchor player. He would be one of the best options at that time.
Hmm.
So that's kind of like very natural. It was nothing forced or anything, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how it went.
Probably, and like, it probably worked off the benefit that you guys have played together for so long. As like you know how each other play, and like that
Yeah.
definitely would help. And well, speaking about playing for so long, just as we're wrapping up, I want to get your take on this whole roster mania that's currently going on. Like, I don't think we've ever seen a roster change everywhere of this caliber before.
Oh.
Like, do you think that like? Do you have a take on like why there are so many roster changes? Like, do you have a view on this at all?
Yeah, I think it's because that some of the teams that are making like very big roster changes, um, it's because they have just simply been doing not good enough.
Yeah.
And I do feel I like the last time I remember that I felt that there was a best team in the world was probably when Navi was playing before the war and everything that happened.
Yeah.
I felt like that was like a true era, if you can call it that, almost. Like they were always gonna make the final. They were probably gonna win it. They had a very good foundation as a team. And I do think that people are like trying to reach that level again. Like like since 2018, I would probably say it's only like Astralis and Navi who's been like actual number one team in the world that you would like consider to be the best team in the world for a longer period of time. Of course, FaZe had its time. G2 had a brief period. Heroic always been like competitive, like top three in the world almost. But I do think that people are trying to be the new Astralis or the new Navi, and I do think they need
Hmm.
like bigger changes. And I think that a team that have inspired teams is maybe Vitality because they had a French core, like French team, French organization. They were doing decent, and then they made the most crazy roster change. Like I don't think anyone, like I remember in the Danish scene, and like everyone was like, "It's not gonna happen." Like
Yeah.
why would they like three Danes go to a like three French guys, uh, three Danish guys, like Savu doesn't even speak English. It's not gonna work. And look at them now. Actually, probably considered to be the world best team. They have won multiple tournaments now and just won the major. And I do think that people are like, okay, you can actually mix nationalities. You can pick up players that barely know the language they're gonna talk, and you can make it work. Like even though G2 did it before, but I don't think they put people that could not speak English. They put people
Hmm.
that could speak English, but yeah.
Yeah, because I think like yeah, like I remember I spoke to Devil Walkers like in BNE, like they comment the game like in Albanian, I think the language is, and like he can't understand when they're playing the game. Like
Yeah.
he sits there and like he like goes off like if they like he can tell what they're saying, and if they say it like too long, he's like, oh, you were complaining type thing. Like he clocks
Yeah.
that, and I'm like, that's mad. But just like a final question here. So I feel like a lot of these roster changes might cause unstable teams, and you guys, as you said, like have stayed together quite a while, and that actually is a benefit for you. Do you feel like because you've already got this like high place in CS, like you're in the top 30, all these roster changes actually set your roster to find more success and to break through like a barrier almost?
Yeah. Of course, I do believe that I do believe that stability is the most crucial thing in Counter-Strike.
Mm.
But until a certain point, you also have to realize that you can't have the same players or you can't be a part of the same organization for too long. It might be because of salary. It might be because of that it just doesn't work anymore. And I do believe that the most of the teams that are making like crazy roster changes, it's good time now. They have tried for so long, and I do believe that, like you say, it's gonna take some time now before people actually stabilize themselves as a truly competitive team in top 10, maybe even like in the top 20. So of course there are like there is a time now where some other teams might flourish a bit more and maybe become like a top 10 team, and depending on the rumors are true or not, like a team like Apex, I'm pretty sure they're not doing any roster changes. They might just cement themselves as a top 10 team now because they have players, they have good organization, they have good surroundings, and they might like be better than some other top 10 teams now. So yeah, it's definitely a benefit for the teams that stay together. But in the long run, it might benefit them,
Mm.
like the bigger organizations, a bit more and the better players.
Yeah, 'cause I think a lot of the organizations, because they're a partner team, they have that ability to have the longevity. Whereas you guys, like as you said, like there was expectations set at one stage. Whereas I think, from my perspective, when you're a partner team, you can sit there and go, like we can take a little bit more time, like what OG
Yeah,
are doing maybe.
yeah.
But yeah, maNkz, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your player break, and honestly, I
Thank you.
cannot wait to see what you guys have to offer after we come out the player break, and I hope to see a lot more of your success. But without further
Thank you.
ado, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of In the Crosshair, and I will see you next time for another episode.